This gentleman is Major General Richard Colt, and at the time of the attacks, he commanded the 77th Regional Support Command of the Army Reserve in New York. Under his leadership, the 77th Regional Support Command led the Army Reserve's response at the World Trade Center site, providing support and assistance in the rescue and recovery operations.
Good afternoon, all. First, I want to say thank you to the club leadership to allow me to talk, to remember people who did a hell of a job, and some people who died doing their job. So, that's the before picture. And I am a native New Yorker.
Everybody okay with this lighting?
I saw the towers. I was working downtown, and I saw the towers go up, and I saw the second tower go down in the middle of the Whitestone Bridge on my way down to my headquarters. So, pretty tough time back that day. Anybody here from New York who is in the city that day? We have a Staten Island lady. Actually, we have Caroline's mother.
Brooklyn. Gentleman back here too.
Say again?
Yeah, the gentleman back here.
Okay. So, let's talk about this talk is for me a way to remember and honor those of my soldiers who were also firemen and died doing their duty, and to talk about the hundreds of other soldiers, reserve soldiers, who left their jobs, volunteered, and did work to help our city recover. So let's talk about the process. What happened that day? 8:45 on a beautiful September day. First plane crashes into the North Tower. A few minutes later, goes into the South Tower. And I've got a couple of pictures for those in a little bit. We set up our own emergency ops. We had practiced that. I took command in June, and we had practiced that in July. So I don't know if that was an omen or what, but it worked well because the people came together and did their job right from the get-go, in spite of the confusion and the pain and the anger. Because 9/11 was a day of murder and terror, but it was also a day of great bravery and heroism and compassion and just getting the job done, doing what we needed to do to help our city and its people. President Bush made the announcement that said, okay, these terrorists did that. We didn't know who they were. When the Pentagon got hit, and one of our dear friends, my wife's friends, was there, helped lead people out of the basement of the Pentagon in the dark because the electricity all went down. And then the FAA grounded all the flights in the U.S. And the South Tower fell at 9:59. Second building hit, first one to go down. And nobody expected either of the buildings to go down. Firemen, many of them were in the lobbies of both buildings, getting ready to move up a lot of floors, and then the buildings came down. First one came down, and when the first one came down, when the South Tower came down, it killed a guy named Pete Gansey, who was the head of department, a senior uniformed officer in the fire department of New York, and it killed the chaplain, Father Judge, with shrapnel. Father Judge was there trying to take care of people who had been hurt on the ground and the debris falling down from when the planes first hit. Then flights were stopped. Then all the U.S. airports were closed. And one of my colonels, a guy named Dan Gansey, who was Pete Gansey's brother, was stuck in Texas. And it took us 4 days to get him home because we had to get clearance from all the way up to the White House. And the firemen that I've talked to that survived that day that they were gonna fight a fire. No ladders could reach, no hoses could reach, only planes and choppers. But then the buildings came down, there was no need to fight the fire. Oh, what was New York City like? Morning of 9/11. Chaos. Communications. The towers contained most of the antennas for southern Manhattan on top of the World Trade Centers. They went down, so did most cell phone communication. Media talked and talked and talked, didn't say much. It still hasn't changed. Public safety, cops, troopers, nobody really knew what went on. We knew planes had hit. We didn't know who. We didn't know why. We didn't know if anything more was coming. We did not know if we were at war. And would there be more problems? The plan was close the tunnels, close the bridges, close every access into Manhattan, and we did. It was done. And if you were stuck in Manhattan, you were stuck. So we figured out how to open it up. And when you wanted to leave, it was pretty much running a gauntlet. But I came down to my headquarters in a car driven by a young police sergeant about 100 miles an hour down Sawmill River Parkway and over the Whitestone Bridge, and the only people on that bridge was us. And that's where we watched the second tower go down. Emotions were high. Most of it was concerned, who have we lost, that we would know. But there was such anger. I mean, if any of those guys in planes who took the hostages and killed people and then drove the planes into the building, they would not have survived. And it was a problem. Who was in charge? Is Giuliani still going to be the man who runs the city? Or are we going to have martial law? We did not know. And so in spite of not knowing, we still had to do our business, do our duty, and take care of our city. I lost 6 soldiers that day, plus Pete Gansey, plus 6 acquaintances that I knew from around my time in the city. Bill was a jet. He was a volunteer fireman. He was on the phone to his wife when the second plane hit. He was telling his wife, "My dear, the plane hit the other building, I'm okay, and I'm gonna go see if I can help." And then there was a roar and then silence. Her second bird came right in on him. So, staff's doing its work. What the hell are we gonna do? How are we gonna react to this? We have to do something. It's our city and it's burning. So don't turn away anybody who asks for help. Unless the command group, and that was me, my deputy, command sergeant major, and my senior staff. We don't say no unless it's absolutely necessary. We're in a 24-hour. I got home about 5 days after this, changed my clothes, changed the stuff in my go bag, and went back to work. And a lot of us were there for most of the next 60 days. And then just keep trying to find out and trying to hear some information that would be relevant. Not knowing if we're at war, we had to basically aggressively monitor the status of our units. And our units were in pretty good shape, personnel-wise. Course level people, if one of the units that was working and providing on-site help going forward needed people with special skills, send them. And don't degrade a unit below deployment level. Because I did not know, none of us knew, again, whether we were at war or whether we were going to be deploying soldiers right away. Mike Mullen, rabid Yankee fan, proud Irishman. Mike was with 2 other fire department members. building started to tremble. He told the other two guys to go because he'd just gotten an emergency SOS from two other fire department members. He went to them, they all died. Went to his memorial service. There was more Yankee memorabilia than Yankee Stadium could probably hold. And he was a great piano player and singer. He was the life of a lot of parties, from what I heard. So what are some of the things we did the first week? And remember, this is all without anybody above us telling us what the heck to do. Trying to figure it out as we went along. And I had good soldiers, men and women, and civilians, full-time, who put their heads together and said, this is how we gotta go forward. FEMA, Fire Department, New York, PD. Lots of friends at the fire department. My father was a cop, so naturally an affinity. And FEMA, men's are men's. They did not do much in New York, but we put them on the list. And then city agencies, who needed us? We kept looking for our people. We started off with trying to find all our first responders, cops, firemen, Port Authority, anybody like that. We ended up with 6. And thank you God, because I expected more. Force protection, we closed down all the Army Reserve centers under my command, closed the gates, issued firearm instructions, rules of engagement, and things went well. They did their job. Senior full-timer in each center, took responsibility and accountability and did well. And we began to mobilize 1,000 soldiers. We were getting people coming into the center every single day looking to volunteer. I filled that 1,000 soldier criteria in a heartbeat. 2 days I had them all mobilized. Because, again, our city was burning. And we were not going to tolerate that. So what did I have and what did they do? 8th Medical Brigade had 3 field hospitals that I was bringing into the city until we didn't. There were very, very, very few wounded. If you were in the building when it went down, you died. No wounded coming out of that. 301st Support Group, we were getting fire equipment coming in from all over the country, including as far away as California. Okay, took the guy 3 days, his crew, to get the plane here. We had people from every state along the East Coast, a bunch out of the Midwest. California was the farthest we got. But these men and women were wonderful. So, the support group, we brought their vehicles in, stored them on Fort Totten, which is my headquarters in Queens, New York, and basically checked their vehicles, made sure they were good, and ultimately escorted them down to the pit. The Engineer Brigade, we volunteered all our heavy equipment and people to use them. The city can be pretty snotty in some ways, and they didn't want our equipment. They had their own. Chemical Brigade, we took some people out of the Chemical Brigade, brought them to Totten, and monitored for anything biological, chemical, that might be coming through the air. Because from where the World Trade Center was, directly across the bay, you hit Fort Totten and us. So, they did their job, but there was nothing like that. 800th Military Police Brigade, they became a force of arms. They did the escorts into the city when we were bringing supplies or new vehicles or people. And those of you who have come from big cities, you know, the minute you open a little gap, in a convoy with flashing lights at the front, flashing lights at the back. You always get some character who wants to sneak right in the middle so they don't get stuck at the lights. And we had that. And the Deployment Support Brigade was commanded by Dan Gansey, who was the brother of Pete Gansey, who had already died. We got him home in time for his funeral, for his brother's funeral. They do planning. Out in the desert, out in Afghanistan, they would decide how convoy was going to travel, where they were going to stop, etc. Did the same thing for us here in New York. John Powell, the youngest of the guys who died, came out of Brooklyn, came out of Crown Heights in Brooklyn. Don't know where he died. He's the only one of mine whose body's never been found. So my staff and I, my senior staff, we go out to this big old Baptist church in Brooklyn, and they're going to do a memorial for him. And I go up to his mom, Ruth, she's passed away now. And I tell her, I'm so sorry, we haven't found Sean. Where could he be? We don't know. And he hasn't been found to this day. But she looks at me and she says, sir, don't you all worry. I know where my son is. You want to hear a demonstration of faith? And every time I think that and say it, I get a little choked. But he was a very talented man. He did a lot of props for different churches that were going to have different types of activities. Very active, neighborhood-oriented guy. Equipment. We gave out tents, cots, radio, vehicles, black jackets, gas mask, you name it. Somebody came to us, we gave it away. But it was tough to get some of it back. We gave them good stuff. And a couple folks tried to give us tents that looked like they'd been there since Civil War. This one of mine, we had IDs on all of mine. And in facilities, FEMA, police department, fire department, Secret Service was there. And state police from both New York and New Jersey. And needed a place to stay. And Fort Totten had a big fire department in New York training area, as well as different buildings that had troops in it. And we made room, and we took care of them. So, what were some of the key things that we did? Fire medical examiner in New York, completely overwhelmed. Even if you put medical examiners from the other 4 boroughs, and there are 5, but the other 4 still overwhelmed. They could not have handled the amount of bodies that came out. So we organized and set up 2 more, and guys out of my transportation company and my quartermaster companies helped to bring the bodies to them. We staged several hundred pieces of fire equipment. God bless every one of those people, men and women. Okay, it wasn't an all-male party. But they came from every place you could think of and just rolled in a top and said, we're here, where the hell do you want us to go? And we sent them, took care of them, and down to the pit they went. And I said earlier, the 800s took all of those equipment, supplies, people, whatever, down to the pit. And they went on. Because again, we did not know for several weeks what had really happened, who had done this terrible deed. And we basically provided a home away from home. If you don't learn something when you have a terrible event like this, you haven't been paying attention. And so we were operating then by the seat of our pants, trying to figure out as we went, what are we gonna do? Who are we gonna do it for? Where are we gonna get the resources? Who do I have to tell? Who do I not want to tell? Now, the last was just almost as important as anything else. So, we need to identify all our first responders, and we needed have a better way of keeping track of address, telephone, things, emails, text numbers, etc. We did a good job, but we could have done a lot better, and we do a lot better now. Personal accountability, just as I said, we needed to know and how to find them. Because we had to call units, homes, work, friends, units, to try to identify where our people were. Landlines became critical. I don't know what we do today. I don't know how many landlines are left. Not many. Emergency Operations Centers, we decided because of the proximity of the attack that we needed to have a second place to go if our first place got attacked or got destroyed. And we went and we did that. This is pretty much in the 2 months post the attacks. Went up, found a few places upstate, not all the way upstate, about 30 miles out, where we'd go and manage a new operations center. And basically set up a skeleton that we could start working right away when we brought up other equipment. Travel on roadways, if you ever been to Manhattan, it's terrible to start with on a good day. And it got worse because from Canal Street south, it was pretty much closed off for weeks because it was a crime site. It was a place where people died, and it was closed. And force protection, can't do much about that anymore because most centers, Army, Reserve, or Guard, a lot of those were built in places where there's a lot of room once upon a time. Now they get covered by tall buildings around them, hard to protect against something bigger and taller than you. Ron Buca, he was my first sergeant when I commanded the 301st Area Support Group. Renaissance man, he'd been on the first task force after the '93 attack on the towers, which was a multi-agency task force. And he finally said, it stinks. Well, they talk about it, who's going to get the credit for something? And he resigned from that task force. He died racing up to the site of the second hit with a lieutenant. And he was a fire warden, fire marshal. First one to die in active duty because he got up to the site of the second hit and then a bird took the building down. And he died, he wrote it down and died. His wife Eve became a very big activist in helping the wives of deceased firemen. And his son joined the Army Special Forces, did 2 tours in Afghanistan, and came home safe. His father, Joe, passed away now for about 6 months after the attacks, and then at the 20-year anniversary, bought hats, shirts, other little bags, and gave them to people who had been instrumental in working on 9/11. So, what did we learn? Oops. But for a second I got the ongoing need to coordinate with people, to stay in touch, to know who's who. their faces and for them to know you is critical when you want a fast response. Decisions got to be made at all levels, all the levels down to the operator, about what are we doing and how are we doing it. And all disasters are local. Okay? Because it affects people you know and love and care about. And for them to die just rips your heart out. Military personnel are the most adaptable people on the face of the earth. Doesn't matter what comes at them, they'll adapt. And they'll react. And they'll do the damn job and they'll do it well. But again, we were functioning by the seat of our pants. And so one of the first things we did as after action duty was to start writing the processes down and what we needed to do and how we needed to do them. And it became for the Army Reserve the standard operating procedure. And then, which was really kind of cool, 2002, the British came calling. And they came out to Tottenham after being down in DC. And they came up to Tottenham and we talked about it. And then we got invited to go to London, the Horse Guards or those over there back then, I don't know who now, responsible for civil disturbances, if you will. And we briefed them and spent a week with them out there. And in 2004, just before I was getting ready to retire, we got invited, Scots came up, and I'm Scottish born. Okay. And when we went over, Claudia and I and my staff, I got introduced as local boy makes good. Just the wrong army. Probably the saddest of the five, of the six. Mark's twins, 13 months old when he died. He's a captain, star athlete in college, high school, and he drives the truck. He's been a fireman for about 5 years, I believe. He gets told to stay with the vehicle. I guess his boss must have had a premonition. The truck chief said, "You stay." He said, "No. Too much leadership." He went with them. He went with his vehicle team and they all died. And I was just thinking when I was getting ready to do this talk, these kids are now young men. That's how fast time has gone. So then and now, 9/12, I'm down at the site. Okay, you could feel the air. The air was just full of particles. Now, you ever been to New York, you notice the little portable stands that you sell hot dogs from or coffee from, all covered with debris, all of them. Firemen and first responders still dying. 9/11's killing us every single day. In Lower Manhattan, when they closed us off at Canal, became a ghost town. The only way you got in if you lived there was you had to prove you lived there. And there were people trying to get down there just to loot. God help them when they got caught. And the worst day of this whole process was not the first day of the attack, even because we got so tied up and so busy and so angry. And we went on this great rescue operation. And then they changed it to recovery, which means no more, we don't believe anybody else is going to be alive. And I tell you this too, there was not a dry eye in the pig. Because we kept hoping. Kept hoping. Minimal wounded, you're in the towers, you died. And people outside, one fireman died because he got hit by a fallen body. Didn't see it coming. Active duty military. We had a lieutenant colonel come up from South Carolina. Never been to the city. What kind of help is he going to be? He doesn't know the streets, he doesn't know the patterns, he doesn't know the people. Local reserve and guard folks are the key to successful operations. And I'm sure you remember from the pictures that were created and made after all the poster stuff. All things saying, do you know so-and-so? Have you seen so? All hoping that their loved one had survived. And it's just so damn sad. It was what it was. Last person to talk about should have gone die on the right-hand top. Fred Hill. He was a captain in the fire department, one of my staff sergeants. We got him promoted after his passing. An engineer, and the stories are he never let anybody do what he couldn't or hadn't done. He led from the front by example. 2002, after raising a lot of money, not a single penny of government, federal, state, city money, nothing. We built a memorial to our 6th dead. Because 6 dead in one day was the highest casualty rate in the 77 since Okinawa in World War II. And we built this lovely memorial that sits on Fort Totten. And we have our day of remembrance every year, and I don't know if they still do it. You know, that's where we would have it. Any Marines there? I know there's at least one. So, the most iconic picture of World War II, Iwo Jima. And 3 firemen, I don't know what units they were from, raised the flag. See the shadow on the towers? The towers came straight down. That's the way they were framed, that's the way they were designed. If they had fallen south, or if they had fallen east, the casualty rate would have been in the thousands, in the tens of thousands. Because that city, on a work day, 50,000 people go in, worked, or pass through Trade Center area on a work day. So the people, when they attacked early and saved us a lot of casualties. That's today. One World Trade Center. Right now, still on the same site where Twin Towers. And that's another look at it up close. And bottom line for me is that the soldiers and civilians who worked through the anger and the pain demonstrated such compassion and caring and darn good work. And we were there for our city. And we still would be. Thank you for your attention. Thank you. I'll take that for my soldiers.